smaller there. Good. Good evening, everyone. Hi. Welcome to Future Ed online lessons. We are an official British Council test centre, and we want to help you get the highest possible results that you can. I've had a cough. And so tonight we are looking at writing task 1, academic. And tonight we're going to look at a little bit more about maps. For those of you who were online last week, we looked at talking about maps that were outdoors. And tonight we're going to have a look at talking about a map that's a floor plan that's inside a building. So let's have a look. And some of this will be revision if you were online last week. And if you're new tonight, it's a complete lesson. Good. And hopefully tonight my slides are all going to be on one page. I've made some adjustments, but now I see. Good. All right, so here we go. So remember our tips, and that should be, we should have more questions on that. So that's gone over to the next page again. But let's have a look. Tonight we're going to look at, remember, always ask the right question, and then you can get the right answer. So for our writing task 1, we're always going to ask ourselves these questions. And for maps particularly, is it outside or is it indoors? And then once again, what's the topic? What's the tense? And then, of course, is there a key? What are the main features? And when we look at map number 2, what's changed? And is there anything that's remained the same? So these are the 5 questions that you're going to ask yourself. Did you manage to get a screenshot of that? It should all have been on one page. I'll just go back to that again. Oh. So that you can get a screenshot of those questions. Question number 1, inside or outside for maps. Question number 2, what's the topic? Question number 3, what tense must I use? And then question number 4, look at map number 1. Is there a key? What are the main features that I can write about? And when you look at map number 2, have a look at the differences. What's changed and what's stayed the same. And once again, what do we need to know? What's important? And of course, as with all our English, our tense is very important, especially if I want that 7, we want to be using our tenses very accurately. So we're having a look at past to past. We can use our past tense. Sometimes they can give us a diagram, and past to present. And today we're going to look at past to present. And then occasionally we might get one where they give us a date in the future, and we have to predict, we have to make proposals, we have to predict, we have to anticipate. And then we have our key language and our key skills. And for diagrams, we use passive quite a lot. And today we're going to need some language to describe interior and some prepositions of place to talk about interior. And then we also need to use some language to describe the differences, for example, bigger than, smaller than. And we need to be able to talk about some change over time. And my technique is going to be ask those 5 questions. So before we move on to the essay, once again, we'll just look at some useful vocabulary to describe alterations, and these can apply to our maps outside buildings, and of course they can also apply to the interior of a building. And once again, we have vocabulary to talk about the building getting bigger, expanding, an extension or expansion, and then removing parts of a building, interior, or an interior wall, for example. We're talking about adding, constructing, adding something new, and then we're talking about transforming, changing the building. So one particular room is converted into another one, or is modified, or perhaps was replaced by. So that sort of language is what you need. If you could just take a screenshot of that. And then we'll move on to the next slide. And once again, just some more language, some more vocabulary, and prepositions are really important, and they're very tight. So we want to make sure, especially if you want that 7, we are quite accurate with our prepositions. So I suggest you take a screenshot of this one too. And we're talking about at the point of entry to the house. This is a good place to start with the entrance. We're going to go inside, and then we can describe the changes inside the building. And have a look at these different kinds of subjects. So for example, you could talk about attendees, or in the case of doctors' waiting rooms, which we're going to look at today, talk about patients, for example. If they're going to the theatre, theatre goers, for example. All right. So there's some really nice vocabulary there, and I've put them into sentences to give you an idea of how to combine these. We talk about on the left, on the right of the desk, on the left side of the reception area, but we say behind the conference room. So we don't say on behind, we say behind the conference center, for example, is a kitchen. In the center of the cinema foyer is a coffee kiosk, for example. We talk about next to, near to, close to. These all have a very similar meaning. And then we also talk about between. We could talk about a wall has been removed between the lounge and the dining room. So that's another useful preposition. And then we can talk about beside is another word for next to. But we don't say beside to, just beside. And then we could also use along. If, for example, we've got a whole row of offices along the back of the building, for example. Opposite is another useful little word. And then sometimes we could even have something diagonally opposite. So make sure you know the difference between these. And then we could use near. If it's not close to or next to, we could use near or near to. Near the canteen or near to the canteen. And have a look at this beautiful word. This is a nice level 7 word, this adjacent. It means next to. So the dressing rooms in a theatre, for example, were constructed adjacent to the theatre storage room. Any questions so far? Hi, Gaurav-Preet. Hello, Nesreen. Good. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so let's have a look. Assuming we really know very little about this task and we know very little about a floor plan. How am I going to tackle this task? And so what I've done is I've given you a really useful little strategy, and I suggest take a screen. You're going to read the given task closely. You're going to have a look at both the layouts because you'll be given 2 maps or 2 floor plans. And then ask yourself those 5 questions. What's the topic? Is it indoors or outdoors? What tense must I use? What are the main points? Okay, what's changed? And make very brief notes. Now, definitely you want a number on your diagrams, 1, 2, 3, at the points, and nice big letters so that it's easy when you're reading your map to go back and follow the numbers that you've written. And you can make very brief notes as well, just using keywords. Remember, for task 1, we only have 20 minutes. And we want to leave ourselves some time to be able to read our essay and edit our essay. Try and correct any errors. And we definitely don't want to take longer, because that takes time away from task 2, writing an essay, which is worth double the marks. I've sometimes seen students spend 30 to 35 minutes of 1 hour to write task 1. And that seriously compromises your writing mark, because if task 2 is worth twice the marks, that's why it's allocated twice the time. It leaves you a very short time to think about your ideas clearly. So make sure you only spend 15 to 20 minutes at the moment, at the most, writing your task 1. And this takes practice, which is why I've worked out these little strategies and these questions, so that when you practice, you do the same thing again and again. And that way you get it fast and you get it accurate. Okay. So once you've made your brief notes and you've got your summary, you're going to construct your sentences from your brief notes, from your keywords. You're going to then write the introduction, and we're going to show you exactly how to do that. And you're going to practice, and then you're going to write an overview, and then write the body of your report. Oh, and that's also come through on the other page. I try to get them better this week. Number 8, of course, allow yourself time to edit your writing. All right. So let's have a look at a floor plan, and it should in fact be on the same page. I tried so hard. Let's have a look at interpreting a floor plan, and there's our task. Now, task number 1, read the given task, look at the diagram, and ask the 5 questions. So we'll just read this. Unfortunately, the map's not on the same page, but just make a note of that. The 2 diagrams show the changes in a medical surgery. This is my task, and they will then tell us, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So they're just asking us to report. We don't need to give our opinion at all, and we don't need to guess or interpret. We just need to report the main features. Okay? So just bearing in mind that our question number 1, our topic is going to be a medical surgery. Let's look at the diagram. So look at the diagram and ask the 5 questions. I'll give you a few minutes to study that. Do you need more time? Good. All right, let's move on and check our answers to that one. Good. So we can see from the diagram, I think I've got one in the next page. Let's see if it came out. Yes, good. So we can see the changes that have happened. Are we going to ask ourselves what's the topic? And of course, that would be the extension or the expansion. These are 2 beautiful words, extension or expansion of a medical surgery. Or we could vary the vocabulary and call it doctors' consulting rooms. Or we've got a room right at the back there, physiotherapy. What is that? Got a physiotherapy room. So we could even call it a physiotherapy practice if we understand a little bit about how these things work. What's the tense? And we can see at the bottom here in A, they've given us the year 2005. And at the bottom in diagram B, they've given us present day. And that's a great one because we can then show the examiner that we're talking from past to present, changes over time, and the result. And you may remember that from your grammar lessons. We use present perfect simple to talk about change over time or to talk about result. And so for these kind of diagrams, we can vary our tenses. And especially if you want that 7, show the examiner that you can talk in both the past simple, talking about then, use the present simple, talking about now, and use present perfect simple to talk about that change over time and the result. And then we'll have a look at map number 1, our main features. And we were looking at about 5 to 6. It's actually, I find it very easy to get your word count up in this kind of task. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. And we're going to find the main features and we're going to make brief notes. So this is your task number 2. I'm going to scroll to the next page and I want you to look for all the main features and decide what you think is important to write about. And as you're doing this, bear in mind, what would you use as your overview? What are the things that you notice first? The main things. And then you can write about and add some details, okay? So sorry, just look at that task. This has come onto the next page again. I haven't got these margins correct. But you're really just looking at map A and map B and deciding what you're going to write about. I'll give you a few minutes to really study this and make your own brief notes. And if you're able to print it out, you can mark on your printout 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can just type in the box when you're finished. Do you need more time? It should really just take a couple of minutes. You don't want to spend longer than 5 minutes doing this, reading your task and making your notes. Let's move on to the next slide and have a look. Okay. So this is what mine looked like. Now we write the introduction. That should be on the next page. So this is what my main features look like. Overall, the facility was expanded or enlarged, and the parking area was increased. Now, everyone might interpret this graph slightly differently. So if you had something slightly different, it's not wrong, okay? I felt that it was important that the entrance was moved and that a children's play space was added, and that the garden was used to erect the minor operations room. Now, you can see how I've shortened this, and perhaps if I was actually writing this, I would put even less in. But I just wanted to give you vocabulary like facility. The facility was expanded. That's a nice word. And that link up parking, be expanded, parking increased, and I'd probably use the increase sign. I'd probably just use the increased sign like that. And then we talk about the entrance was moved and children, I would probably just put their play space added. And this would give me a reminder. And then I'm going to go back and expand on these. And then for the details, I commented on that the entrance, once at the front, now on the side of the building, and that the reception desk was moved to the entrance, and a larger waiting room area. More rooms now, but smaller rooms and smaller office. And then I spoke about the fences. The fences were relocated or removed to allow for extra cars to park. And the fence on the left was moved to the back of the building to accommodate the new side entrance. So those were the points that I found. And now let's move on and write the introduction. And first of all, let's just have a quick chat about introductions. This will be revision if you were with us online for our lesson last week. But remember to paraphrase the information. Rewrite it in your own words, but keeping the same meaning. You don't need to paraphrase every word. And try to use synonyms or words with a similar meaning to vary your vocabulary. Or try to use a different part of speech. And I'll show you examples of that further on in this lesson. And then once again, you can also try to vary your sentence structure. For example, change from active to passive voice, or try to use a gerund or a relative clause. Now this task was very simple, okay? So here's your task 4. Just read this and make a note, because again, we're going to need to move on to the next slide. This should have all been on the same slide. Task number 4, rewrite the introduction information using your own words. Use the words and the phrases in this box. So there's your given task, the 2 diagrams, and what I've done is I've put it in this box here on the left-hand side. And what I want you to do now is just practice, how would you rewrite this introduction? How would you change each part of this? I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Good. All right, so let's move on and check your answers, and I'll show you what I've got. And once again, there's not one correct answer. So if you have something slightly different, it's not wrong at all. It's just that we can say these in many, many different ways. So let's have a look. This is what I had. So we don't really need any of that information. Once we know that we need to look for the main features and we need to make comparisons where possible, we don't need the rest. We just need the topic sentence, which is the 2 diagrams show the changes in the medical surgery. And this is what I did. Note this word, the given floor plans. Okay, this one is just because the examiner has given that to me. So the given floor plans. So see the differences, the 2 diagrams, the given floor plans. That gets me using that passive. The task that was given is passive. And because it's in front of my noun, it becomes an adjective, the given floor plans. And I've got 3 different words that you can use there instead of show, illustrate. The given floor plans reveal, or the given floor plans depict. So this is this is one example of how I can vary my vocabulary. When we're talking about changes, we could say how something happened. So how a physiotherapy practice was expanded. Now let's just go back to the question, because I think they give us the active in the question. Are they just simply talk that show the changes in a medical surgery? And I've put this in the passive by saying how the physio practice was expanded becomes my passive. And then I've added to my time between 2005 and the present, using between and correctly this time. Task number 5. Let's have a look. Now what I want you to do is just read and notice the flow of the 2 introductions. This is going to give me a good CC, or coherence and continuity mark. for my introduction. So we were given the two diagrams show the changes in a medical surgery. Now just read along with me. We change it to the given floor plans depict how a physiotherapy practice has been expanded between the year 2005 and the present. And notice how I've used has been expanded. I've turned it into my present perfect simple. Present perfect. Yeah, that's correct. Present perfect simple, but passive. Present perfect simple, passive. That's what's going to get you a 7, okay, if you can do that accurately. Or I've written it another way as well. The given floor plans illustrate the main developments which have taken place in a medical center, a medical facility between 2005 and the present day, or the present time. So I can add those little words just to vary that slightly. And this time I've referred to it as a medical facility. So that's a good basic introduction. This one's quite short. And now we'll move on to the overview. So now we want to write a good overview. And this is really in general. We're not going to mention figures, but we're just going to mention in a couple of sentences the main changes that have taken place. And we can start our overview with either one of these words, overall or in general. The facility has been enlarged and the parking area has been increased to accommodate the busier practice. The entrance has been relocated to allow the addition of an extra consulting room, and a new room for minor operations has been constructed. So those are the main points. It's been enlarged, the parking area has been enlarged, the entrance has been relocated to create space for additional rooms. Good. And now we are going to write the body of our essay. So we're going to go back to those brief notes that we made earlier. So let's have a look. First, we extend those notes. This is an exercise. Of course, you're not going to do this, but this is an exercise for you. And let me see, I think that goes onto the other page. Yes, it does. How annoying. Okay. So have a look at points 1 and 2. And what I want you to do is try to extend these notes, those original notes that you made, into full sentences. And what's important is try to combine the ideas where you can, okay? And because that also means that I can start to use linkers, linking words like and or while or however, okay? So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to read through these sentences that we looked at earlier and think about how you would expand that into a full sentence. You might want to take a screenshot. And we'll move on to number 5 and 6 on the number 5 on the next page. And have a look, let's just check our answers. Notice how here I've combined my points 1, 2, and 3. So we're talking about entrance at the front, now on the side, child play space, fence moved, and larger waiting room area. And I've rolled all of those three into one sentence. Let's read it together. The main entrance to the surgery or the practice, once at the front, was moved to the left side of the building. This not only, have a look at that, not only, but, this is a nice level 7 structure. This not only created the space for a much larger waiting room, but also allowed a new space for children to play. The reception desk has now been placed at the front of the facility. Now just read through sentence 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. I'm just going to close the window for the noise. Notice how I've got those linkers. I've used however. And notice how I've used this little word here, only the physio room remains the same, just to emphasize this fact. And once again, notice this little linker, while. Okay, good. We'll see these sentences again when we read the model answers, so I'll move on. I'm sure you want to get your dinner. Here we go. All right. And we're going to need to read this on 2 pages, so if you're going to take a screenshot, you can take one as we read through this one. So let's read the model report closely. And I want you to notice the use of tenses, how I've used active and passive, where I've used some comparative language, and notice how the vocabulary has been varied. All of these give me a higher mark for my vocabulary, a higher mark for my grammar, and a higher mark for the flow of my essay. So let's read it together. The given floor plans depict how a physiotherapy practice has expanded between 2005 and the present. Doesn't look right, 64 words. I think that means it's meant to be on the next line. Overall, the facility has been enlarged to accommodate the busier practice. An extra consulting room and a new room for minor operations have been added. And then we start mentioning our details. The main entrance to the surgery, once at the front, was moved to the left side of the building, creating, have a look at this ing, moving into a gerund, creating a new welcome area, and the receptionist desk was relocated to this new entrance hall. So have a look at how I've referred to the reception area as a welcome area. And instead of using the word reception, I've changed the part of speech to talk about the receptionist's desk. So this is what I mean by trying to use a different part of speech. So the reception desk was relocated to this new entrance hall. See how once again I've changed that word reception to entrance hall. This renovation, this is a beautiful word, this renovation not only created the space for a much larger waiting room, but also allowed a new space for children to play in the reception area. So now I mention the word reception. And have a look at, they talk about children's play space. I've used a space for children to play. So I've changed my words around. And notice that there I'm using my past simple tense. Okay, I'll just put a big P past simple tense. And then we'll move on to the second paragraph of the body of our report. Have a look at how I've started this in order to. Okay, so I'm giving a result. Okay, and I want something to happen, and so I have to do something in order to accommodate the additional consulting room, as well as the larger waiting area, all doctor's rooms, as well as the office, needed to be made smaller. Okay, this is useful in order to accommodate the additional consulting rooms, because they haven't extended the walls, have they? They haven't made the entire building bigger. They've just moved around within the building. Have a look at this as well as. Sometimes it's nice to replace and with as well as. So we can show the examiner we can use both and as a linking word and as well as. The larger waiting room. See that? There's my language to compare. Now they call them consulting rooms or just CRs, and what I've done is I've called them doctors' rooms, or maybe they're physiotherapist rooms, but they're still doctors. As well as the office. Needed to be made. Now here I've got a very high level of structure, and obviously not everybody is going to be able to write like this, but this is what you need to be able to do to get that level 7. I've got my verb pattern, need, to make, and I've turned it into the passive, so needed to be made. So I've got my verb pattern and my past passive in those few words, and that's going to get me my level 7. Let's read the rest of the essay. The fence on the right side of the building has been moved to create space for cars to park, while the fence on the right of the building was relocated to the back of the building to accommodate the new side entrance. So there I'm using that little preposition and that little phrase to talk about a position, the fence. And note I've used a has been moved, my present perfect, passive again. Why, my infinitive purpose. To, my infinitive with to create extra space for cars to park. And while, because I'm sort of combining two ideas here, the fence on the right of the building was relocated. So I didn't repeat the word moved. Okay, now this is something that, especially at lower levels, students do often when they're writing, of course, in a hurry, and of course, under pressure. They might write been moved, been moved, been moved, and they might repeat the same vocabulary. So I've just tried to illustrate to you here how to change that vocabulary. So the fence is relocated to the back of the building to accommodate a new side entrance. And then the one little point, I've got a useful little phrase here that you can sometimes wrap up with, whoops, I've gone too far. It is interesting to note that. And this is a way that you can actually close your report, because we don't write a conclusion in report because we're not drawing any conclusions. So I've just used this as a point. It's interesting to note that the physio room remains the same. Or I could say remains unchanged. Or it's interesting to note that the physio room has not been altered in any way. And that kind of closes my essay, and it mentions the only point that has something that hasn't really changed. And there I've got 185 words, which is good. That's a good amount. Okay. It's still 35 words over my 150 words, but as I said, it's very easy to get your word count up. Okay, we don't want to write over 200. Remember, the more words you write, the more place you've got for mistakes. Okay, so here's some homework for you. And if you would like to make a screenshot of this, and it should again be all on one page. So now for tonight, you're welcome to write your own report for homework, but make sure that you learn the steps first and follow the steps as we have done it. And this time you're going to write, there's your task. The 2 diagrams show the changes in an art gallery. So either write that down or take a screenshot. 2 diagrams show the changes in an art gallery. And once again, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features to make comparisons where relevant. And here's your diagram. Get ready to take a screenshot. There we go. So I want you to follow the 5 questions, follow the steps for the strategy, and then write your own introduction, write your own interview, and write the body of the report. And if you can, pop in a picture of this diagram, because one of us will mark it, and it may not be me. If it's one of the other examiners, then they may not have a diagram. So if you can, make a screenshot of that and just pop it in at the top of your writing with your topic heading. It'll make it easier for the examiner to mark it. There we go. So you're welcome to email that through to the school, and one of us will mark it and give you some feedback. Okay, but do be sure to study the lesson well first, and do be sure to implement everything in this lesson before you send in the report. And this should be on the next page. Here are the school's contact details. Good. So we do offer these online courses, and we'll be doing writing part 1 and writing task 2 next Wednesday, writing task 1 at 6 o'clock, and writing task 2 at 7 o'clock next Wednesday. And then we'll watch your email box. We'll be sending out an email, and we'll also send out an email for the reading lesson, and we're about to start doing speaking as well. So we also offer evening classes and a couple of classes on the weekend. So our Tuesday evening is writing task 2 every week. And then on the weekend, on a Saturday between 6 and 8, we do reading. And on a Sunday between 10 and 12, we do touch on the speaking and the listening and task 1. All right. If you need a very high score and you do find you need additional tuition, you're welcome to contact the school, and we can provide a private tutor for you, either online or you can come into the school. All right. And the other thing that we offer is a mock test, and that's really useful. This IELTS test is very expensive. And so it's not the sort of thing that you really just want, oh, I'll just go along and see what marks I get. That's a lot of money to pay for chance. But you can actually take a few lessons and then do a mock test, and that'll give you an idea of the level that you are at now. And then from there, you will know how long you should take to prepare. And then when you feel ready, perhaps even if you've taken a further mock test later, a couple of months later, then book your exam with us when you feel ready. And that way you can save a lot of money. I've seen students writing this test 17 times, and they still haven't got the results that they want. But what they've done is they've put all their money into writing the test again and again and again. And they haven't put any money into the preparation time, and they haven't put any money into some lessons, and they haven't put any money into getting some writing feedback. So we can help you reduce the amount of time that you need. All right, and we are going to be getting grammar lessons up and running as well. So that's going to help you with particular grammar points that we may mention you need to work on in your writing. So you're welcome to contact us for more information. Contact our head office in New Zealand